Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
So, welcome to the show. Today is Tuesday, and this is going out live on Mintwave Radio. If you already have the Alexa skill, you can just ask her. Or if you don't have it, go to mintwave-radio.com to download it. You can also see the weekly schedule from all the hosts. Feel free to download the app for Apple or Android and subscribe to any that take your fancy. So today's episode is 172. And today we have the lovely Dave Holloway. Now, he is a breathworker, meditator, and firewalker. And we're going to be talking about combining the mind, body, and heart into a winning formula. Now, I'm your host, Karen Roberts, just helping coaches to get their message heard to those who need to hear it. Dave is going to be sharing his story, but his introduction to the world of, say, personal development came in 2016 as part of a property investing program that he was part of. Since that initial toe dipping, Dave has continued to broaden and deepen his experiences in various areas, both as a delegate and more recently as a deliverer, as he will share with you. The first event attended was a 3-day retreat run by Sanjay Shar, focusing on emotional intelligence. Now, since that first retreat, Day now co-delivers and trains for Sanjay and has become a master firewalk instructor and a multi-sensory breathwork practitioner. It was during breathwork that Dave discovered a love of guided meditation and his gift for delivery to others. So he now offers online guided meditations via his One Breath website and has developed SOAR breathwork based on the emotional intelligence work that he now teaches. So Dave, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Karen. Wow. You just summed me up.
All right, should we go now? No.
We're done.
We're done for the day.
That was nice.
Well, if we'd like to go into a little bit more detail, like property into doing what you're doing now, I mean, if you'd like to sort of share a little bit more in depth relating to that story.
Yes, and so much of this is accidental as to where I am now from there.
Is it accidental? It accidental?
Yeah. So it depends how much
woo-woo. In the flow.
It depends how much woo-woo you want sprinkled. And we could chip a bucket load on if you want to. I don't mind.
Excellent.
In fact, whenever I've been on any event, anything where someone mentions the next bit may be a bit woo-woo, that's it. I think now I know why I'm here. So this is the reason. So no, originally property was, for me, that was a means to an end, partly because of certain circumstances in my life. If I was to find a place to live, a house of my own in the area that I live in, that wasn't looking very achievable. I thought, okay, if I can go down this property investing route and get properties and generate wealth and money and stuff, then that's the answer to the question, solves the problem. But it was within that property course, which is a very clever way of introducing those that may not be aware of the sort of personal or self-development world, what's potentially out there. And I suppose I was one of the group of people on that course that really hooked into that developmental side of things. So that's where it started for me. So certainly accidental in terms of me not having a plan to go where I've gone and end up where I am. But yeah, as you sort of alluded to, there's not never really anything accidental. I think when you're ready for things,
they appear.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's interesting that it seems to me, I mean, I've never been involved in property investment, that, okay, things like that, it's all about wealth creation. There is quite often they put in the self-development, I presume, because we have been conditioned from birth to study, get a qualification, get a job, join the rat race, make just enough money to cover your bills pretty much, and not enough money that you have to turn back up on Monday because you need that money. Whereas when you're talking about wealth creation, you need a different mindset. So input the self-development. The only reason I say that is my introduction to self-development came from a network marketing company, which I was rubbish at, by the way.
Most of us are.
I didn't do very well selling, products, supplements and things. But it's what I learned from the self-development side allowed me to achieve my goal, which had nothing to do with network marketing, which I'm sure they weren't very happy. They would have been happier if my goals had been around building a business like that. But isn't it funny that it seems to be that when you immerse yourself in something like that, it's opening up this new world, as it were, of the self-development arena.
Yeah. For me, I suppose I could see it. I then went in off the deep end and just went straight into it, dived into it, and kept sort of swimming down. And the more there is, the better it is, or was. And it's only now, however many years, that was 2016. So 7 years later, I'm starting to come back round again to think, okay, so now where am I in my life? Where is my earnings coming from? What's my wealth? And so I'm looking back to those things now that actually I went completely away from for, let's say, 7 years, where I've just been diving into the woo-woo stuff, because I absolutely love all that. It's anything woo-woo, right up my street.
Well, I think it's all woo-woo. And when we sort of when we understand it, and obviously there are levels of awareness, as it were, or suppose of your real level of, you can hear something, but it's when you know it on a real internal level, that's when things can change. But it doesn't happen overnight. It takes practice, and you have to resort back to it, because we can get complacent, we can get caught up in the stories, and then, like you were saying earlier, when we were talking earlier about the doing, we can get caught up in the doing, and we have to remind ourselves to focus on the woo-woo, if you want to call it that, because it all starts from there, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it's very much, you say reminding it. It's a bit like when I'm not a sailor, so I'll talk about sailing a boat with very little actual knowledge of it. But my if you can imagine, you're sailing from point A to, they don't ever sail in a straight line. They don't point to the place they're going to, because if they did, they wouldn't end up there, because the wind blows, the currents, the tides, everything's moving, adjusting. So that's what you have. Everything's changing, so you have to be constantly adjusting to stay on that straight path. So it's not actually a straight path, it's a series of corrections. And that for me is the re-reminding. You drift slightly, that's fine. And then you just notice you've drifted slightly, bring yourself back. And then as you drift again, one way or the other, which you will do, you notice it, you bring yourself back. That's what you're doing. You're just constantly re-reminding or correcting to get to where you ultimately want to go to. So I actually sounded like a sailor then, didn't I?
Yeah, you know what? I did used to. Oh my goodness, when I was a teen, go on. Oh, not big sailing boats, and I've never thought of it like that actually, because yes, people tend to see. They look at someone that maybe is ahead of them in whatever capacity, and it's this, or maybe this is just me. Back then, I used to think, they just got there, they went there. And they don't see the journey that they took. And you're right, it's this constant, as long as the trend is going in the right direction, You're going in the right direction. But we seem to want this straight line. I just want to go from here to there. And you're so right. I've never thought of it like that. It is going to be, that's life. Everything's up. Well, we'd be dead, wouldn't we? If our heart just...
That is, you're right. It is life, because it's constantly throwing things at you in different ways. So whether it's the tide, the current, the wind, a storm, the swell in the sea world, any of that, it's everything's something that just changes your direction slightly, or affects what's going on for you, your stability. So you're constantly adjusting, and you're following others as well. That's the other thing. you're following others.
And
So
then
those the
it can
first
be
people,
overwhelming.
well, yeah, and I'm going to say, those first people that set sail across an uncharted ocean, I'm not even sure if there will be anything at the other end of it, but because there is something at the other end of it, and they can say how they got there, other people, it becomes an easier journey as well.
Ah,
That's
yes.
where it's so great when you've got other people to share from or gather stuff from. So I love dipping into different things. So, when you're saying about the fire walking, the breath work, meditation, I love the dipping in, because invariably at some point, when I said earlier about if someone mentions the woo woo that's coming up as a bit of a warning for some people, for me that's, this is the interesting bit, because invariably they'll say something that I've sort of heard before but in a different way, and then you think, okay, so that's a different way of saying that thing. So now with two people saying basically the same thing but in a different way, one makes maybe more sense in some respect, and suddenly you're just bringing all these things together, and that to me is where it's all magic. That's the lovely part.
Oh, absolutely. And that is just so true. They are actually all saying the same thing in slightly different ways, and sometimes we need to hear it in that way for it to totally, for us to take ownership of it and get it. And God, dear, I mean, I've had to hear the same thing over and over and over to finally actually, because it's not that you can, like I say, the different levels of awareness you can you can consciously understand a concept, but until you've totally understood it enough so that you can actually explain it to others, I suppose for one would be one, almost not a test, but of your real understanding of it. And we do with this, because otherwise we go back to our old programming, which doesn't have any of that in. And these constant reminders and hearing it in a new way for it to finally, so that we actually act on it. Because it's one thing hearing something and consciously having an understanding of, why that would work. But until we act on it, then we don't really know, because that's in the knowing, isn't it? When we actually take it on and we get the results ourselves, so it's not somebody telling us, that's when we really know, isn't it? And that's when we want to do more of it.
Yeah. When you experience it for yourself, and then that it's true for you, or it's right for you, or it works for you, whatever it is, and however you want it to say it. But that's the only time, because people can tell you that. I mean, the property courses are wonderful, and certainly in my experience, the people that I was training with, they want the best for everyone in the room, because they genuinely want everyone to do well. But there is an element within that of, well, look, this is how I did it. So if you replicate and model what I've done, you'll do it. And this was one of the problems, that not everyone can mirror or, let's say, copy someone else and get the same results. Because there's other things at play. Again, there's other things. The winds are different, the currents are different, and our way of approaching things is different. So it's not one size fits all. But they're saying to people, just do this, model me, do it like this, and this is what you'll get. And it doesn't quite always work like that. And for those people that are trying to model other ways of doing things and not getting the results, that's when they can struggle. And that's why people like Sanjay came into the course that I was on, because his approach to emotional intelligence and more about being than doing. But it's that can sound a little bit flippant, as don't do anything and you'll be all right. And it's not that. But it just is a way of reaching those people that are trying their hardest to do the things that they've seen other people do, and they're not getting any success from it, to help them to realise that there may be their way of doing it, which isn't to completely copy or model someone else's. It's to find their way of doing it. You can take that information, but you need to process it, and then you need to do it in your way to make it your success for you. And at that point you can go, this is how it works. This is how it works for me. That's the important thing.
And is that why you I suppose this, because there are so many modalities out there, so you've chosen to take certain ones because it's resonated with you? So you'll do so breath work, meditation, fire walking, all these kind of things. I mean, so we're talking about here combining the mind, body and heart into a winning formula.
Well, because that's what we are. You just hit it, Karen. That's what we are. We are mind, body, and soul. We are mind, body, and spirit. So if you can combine all three, you're touching each part of us rather than focusing on any one thing. You people, I don't know, as an example, therapy, talking therapy. I don't know anything particularly about talking therapy, but by its suggestion of its name, there's a lot of talking and explaining, remembering stuff, and this is what happened. Well, that may appeal to the mind part of your being, but you've still got the body and the heart, and they're different, and all three of them. And this is more what I'm, I suppose, discovering and finding out, that they are different. They've all got their role, but they are what bring us together as a whole, as a whole being. So you need to touch all three to get I wouldn't say the best results. That's not the words, but you need to touch all three. If you can touch all three, that's where it's becomes
to have a
special.
Successful life, where that's happiness, to be happy, to have a fulfilling, vibrant life. And you're right, we, again, through our conditioning, I suppose, through the school system, everything's to do with the mind, the ego part of the mind, the remembering facts and memory and things like that. And then the body, the physical part of it, again, the doing, the do. And you're right, is when we're out of whack, when we're out of balance, why is there in an age where we have so much, and yet it feels like there's more and more people that are actually unhappy. Their mental health is an issue, and again, because they're all caught up in stories they're creating. It's not necessarily the truth. It might be a truth, but it's not what is possible, because there is this disconnection, do you think, between the actual, like you say, they're all important and they all have their roles. The ego mind in and of itself still has a certain role to play to keep us safe. However, we let it control us rather than using it as a tool. It's a tool, as is the body is our tool to get things done. So there is a doing part, but it's all got to come from here first.
Yeah.
So for people who do think that is a bit woo-woo, and when you talk about the being, how would you explain to people what being is and what the real benefit of it is?
That stopped me. I could go into something around, you're down into the possible realms of explaining the unexplainable. There is elements of that if you're really going to, touch the truth, the core of it. But being, you could look at it as a balance between the body, the mind, the heart, because that's where we've lost track slightly, particularly in the sort of more developed world, that heart-centered part of us. But the balance, the true being is a balance, because as you said, you do need the mind, and you do need that ability to forward plan and think into the future, even if the tendency for some people is to end up in a bit of a crappy place when they do that. But having that ability to project potential outcomes of things and actions you might take to get a feeling for what would work and what wouldn't, it's a brilliant thing. That's one of the things that differentiates humankind from most of the, if not all of the animal, a lot of the animal kingdom. That ability to be able to predict outcomes and work things out in advance to your own benefit. So that's wonderful, brilliant. And our bodies and the way we move, and again, we're not the fastest, the biggest, the strongest in the animal kingdom, yet combine our body's ability with our mental capacity, we've become the dominant species. All wonderful. And yet within that, there is the heart center. There is that part that is the nurturing part of us. It's the part that grows within us. That's the maybe the less tangible by a long chalk. So get the balance of the three. It's the beginning of being. That's approaching life from a balanced position, where you're not dominant in any one area. Because you could be over dominant in the heart area and be the most placid, lovely, wonderful person in the world, which is great, but you're not doing much. Potentially, I nearly swore then. So it's to me, being then is get the 3 in a balanced spot, balanced place, be balanced, and go from there. And then you can explore it, any one of the 3 in any combination you like, and see what that's like.
Well, I think you actually explained it right at the beginning in the pause. It's, it's that space to quieten your mind and for the things to sort of come up to you. And this is what I think people misunderstand or really don't see the benefit, because you think, well, you're doing nothing. Well, actually, in the doing nothing, you're doing everything.
Yeah.
Because it's in the space, because we are so, I don't know, like we said, doing orientated, and we're so focused on things. And we forget there's, amongst the things, there's also space. And amongst that chitter chatter in the mind, there is actual peace of calm. And we can't come up with ideas. We can't get creative when we're overthinking and we're stressed. We can't, we're going to be far more productive when we've, I call it I'm practicing being, just that space. That's just as important as the doing. And I suppose you're doing that. I mean, part of that would be in meditation. The idea, I suppose, is to slow down the thought process, calm the mind, to just focus on a spot, practice that, I suppose. So you're giving guided meditations, but it did mention a little bit more in detail about that, to do with more, when you talk about multi-sensory breath work.
Yeah.
Right. What is that all about?
The multi-sensory part of the breathwork is a particular breathwork that I deliver, breath power. And there's a bit of a clue in the name. It involves, so we're breathing at a lot of breathwork involves breathing in certain patterns. Breath power is certain patterns at different rates as well. So we change the speed of the breathing pattern throughout the session. But within that music, which isn't unusual again, you start to realize there are other types of modalities and things that are similar. So other breathworks that are similar. So music playing. The guidance within it as well is quite specific in some of the ways that it's delivered. And there are drums playing, and there's other stuff going on. So it's a way of allowing. I mean, a typical meditation would involve quite often a one-pointedness as a focus on one thing, whether it be the breath, candle, or various other things. And the idea being that when the mind's one-pointed and focusing on one thing, that almost occupies it, so it allows other things to settle and that calmness to come over you. This is more intense, but the effect can be similar, as in, because of the different things that are going on, the mind is now, rather than being one-pointed, it's got so many things going on that it can't keep up. So eventually it gets to a point where it just gives up. It goes, oh, well, that's it, and I'm done. And at that point, that's when everything else can take over. That's when the natural body intelligence can kick in. Because it's almost a way of rather than relaxing the mind, you exhaust the mind. You sort of take it to the point where it just goes, do you know what? I'm done now. I'm switching off.
Well,
and it's gone.
Well, that makes sense, because it wants to take over, doesn't it? We need to get out of our own way.
Yes,
so is that what you're talking about?
Yes. So I suppose where it works differently is, rather than with a meditation, you're aiming at that, getting to that calm point, where if someone's already got an active and busy mind, that can be a challenge maybe. And they're waiting and working and allowing the mind to slow down, the chatter to stop, and am I doing it right, and what's this, and have I forgotten to think about whatever it is we're concentrating on, and there's stuff going on in a very calming environment. Turn it the other way around and go to the mind, right, do you want something to play with? Right, breathe like this, now breathe like this, now breathe like this, listen to this, do this, sound like this is going on, that's going on. And at some point it just goes, right, I'm done now. the result is the end result is still that you get the opportunity for the body intelligence to kick in. And you've in this sort of environment with the breath work, as opposed to meditation, maybe you've brought energy into your system. You've brought extra energy into the system, and yet you're invariably you're sitting or lying, or you're quite still, and yet you're breathing in a way that you would normally breathe when you're active. And so you've drawn energy in a way that you would if you're running up a hill, and you're sitting or lying reasonably still, not always, but reasonably. From that point, your body's now going, right, I've got a load of energy. What am I going to do? Mine's gone to sleep. Fantastic. Because there's lots of stuff I want to do that I can do with all this energy. And off it goes, and it does stuff. And then things happen.
So what's the end result? So how do you feel afterwards? And how different is what you do from there, or the results that you get from what you do from there?
I can only speak from my personal experience from when I did it for the first time as a delegate, and breath power in particular was quite, I want to say special. I don't know if that's really the way to describe it. It was a great experience. I actually did it. I was in Euston in London in a hotel, and we were given a map with directions to walk to the nearest sort of green space park, which was about, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes across the A40. It's like stuff going on, traffic and that. And got to this park, and I sat there, and it was the most peaceful, serene place. I'm in the centre of pretty much of London. I've got people the other side of the park that I could barely see, and yet I felt I could hear every word they were saying. The birds were singing so loud, the colours were vibrant and bright. It was just wonderful as an experience of sat there with everything had been dialed up a notch or three. Colours, the birds sang song, and yeah, it was. And yet the traffic wasn't an issue. It wasn't impinging or anything like that. It was so just from a state to being of a clarity of things around, visual sensory clarity was where I was at in the centre of London, with a peaceful place. It was quite surreal in that way. And I think for me then, I mean, that sort of led to me becoming more interested in it and finding out more about it, and then doing other practices of breath work, and the meditation came from that as well. It wasn't particularly a planned series of steps, but all along the way, for me, it's just I've been getting more clarity, and the more sessions that I participate in as well as a delegate. So I keep going back to other people. Again, it's not a case of, well, yeah, right, I've learned to do this, now I can deliver it. That's it. For me, it's okay, but how do I go further with this? Because I'm still getting so much from it, so much. And I think ultimately clarity is I get from it. And it might not always be the clarity of something that I'm expecting it. So I find it difficult sometimes to say, what would you get from this? Well, in a certain area, to a certain extent, I don't know. You will get something. You'll get what you need. Probably what's right for you.
What you need.
And which sounds a bit, it's vague and it's difficult. And in some respects, it makes it a hard sell to get people into the events to say, look, come along because you'll get something. I could go the other way and go, this will blow your socks off. But it might not, because every now and again someone says, I didn't like that. It's okay.
But it just goes to show that we had, like, you know, if you're going to go woo-woo, we all know what we need. Our inner, whatever you want to call it, whether it's your soul, your inner being, your whatever, knows exactly what you need for you. We can override that because we think we know what we need, and it might not actually be what you need. But from what you've shared there, it sounds like this is sort of a combination of meditating, practicing being, but on steroids. Not that steroids are good, but you know, you get the picture. So that the answers do come up, because again, like we are so busy, we are constantly distracted. So this mind stuff, the ego stuff, tends to take over because we need to feel, because it's a myth that we're in control, but we feel like we have to try to take control. And actually, by practicing this, whatever it is you need at that time, whether it's to do with work, relationships, health, whatever, will come to the surface. Yeah, clarity, yes, it's intangible, but that's, for me, is that, when we have clarity, things get done. It's when there's confusion or overwork, you're procrastinating. That's, you're wasting energy, wasting time, not getting the results because things aren't getting done. Whereas when you can find that place of peace, clarity, you're more focused, boom, you can get stuff done in 10 minutes rather than procrastinating about it all day and not doing anything. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah,
that I've done it.
I'd bring it back to a place of balance. Because, again, the mind, the body, the heart, emotional side of the all, we wouldn't be human without any one of them. But invariably, one, two, maybe a bit louder. I mean, the way you were describing it then, I was thinking, there's a part of your mind that is like a little yappy dog, but the intuition, the guiding bit, the bit that really knows, is more like a Great Dane that's just ambling around quietly, rarely makes much of a noise and doesn't bark a lot and just sort of is there. And then you've got this little yappy terrier thing that's snapping around, and that's the one that gets all the attention and gets heard and gets listened to. And you miss the guidance of the sort of the quieter, larger dog in the background.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose that feeling of, aren't we all looking for that feeling of peace? We might dress it up and we think we want other things, but actually that total feeling of peace and being calm is what we all want, so that you can get that from that. Is this a daily practice? Is this something that you do every single day?
Ew. Right, I didn't immediately go, yep. There's a clue there, I suppose. Yeah. It might not be regular at a time of day. I've recently, and I suppose my habits change. I've recently got into the habit of each morning as I wake up. I was reading something recently where it said going from that sleep into wakefulness, there's a brief moment when you wake up and you haven't engaged everything and your mind hasn't kicked in and you haven't started planning your day. If you can catch that moment and just sit in that moment, or in my case, still lying in bed at that time because I've literally just woke up. You've not got up, you've not done anything. That moment you realise you've come out of sleep, you've not quite got into unless your alarm's gone mental, then it's a bit different. But there is a moment where before you start planning everything, you can sit with that, lie with that, and just explore that place and just recognise that you're coming into the world again, having been less engaged with it during the night, which is a peaceful place. That's the irony of it. That's where sleep is a wonderful place. Once you get out of the dream thing, which can be a bit of a roller coaster depending on how you dream, but outside of that, it's the most peaceful, quietest, relaxed we are. And so when you come out of that, if you can just take a few moments just to realise that, even appreciate that, knowing that you're now back into the world, but you don't have to be straight out of bed and 100 miles an hour. You can ease into it. And the longer that easing into it lasts, the more that peace from the sleep you just experienced can last.
So, Dave, who is it you serve and how do you help?
I best serve people with busy minds, because it gives, I think I give people a chance to quieten. One of the reasons I got into the meditation was just based on feedback I got from friends I did a meditation at an event just as a time filler, and the feedback was that people enjoyed it and my voice was calming or soothing or something along those lines. So okay, and then it was, well, can you do more of them? So that's I think at the beginning earlier I said that a lot of this is accidental, as in I didn't have a specific plan of, well, if I do this then I can do that, and if I do that then that will lead to this. So one of the upshots, yes, my meditations are soothing, they calm people, and invariably the comments revolve around quietness and slowing down the speed of thoughts. And then it got to a point where somebody had their sleep tracker on and fed back that they could now demonstrate that they got so many more hours of deeper sleep after having done listened to one of my meditations than they had before it, because they had all the info on their sleep tracker. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, because I'd never even would have even thought you could do it. I did no idea. I was like, oh, that's good, that's clever. So yes, I serve people from the meditation perspective. I certainly do serve people that have busy minds, busy lives, and are looking for an opportunity to see the slow down or get some maybe deeper, longer sleep periods. And I can actually say that's been scientifically demonstrated, or at least recorded on someone's sleep tracker. Because then a friend did it, and she said, well, I thought I was sleeping better, but didn't really believe it until someone else had said about their sleep tracker. So she checked her, whatever it was, Fitbit thing, and went, oh yeah, same for me then. And other than that, I would say I'd certainly serve anyone that's interested in finding out more about themselves and how they tick, maybe where their balance is between heart, mind, body. A lot of the work I do with Sanjay involves around the heart intelligence, the mind intelligence, and the body intelligence, and the relationships with our emotions from those places which vary. So anyone that's interested in finding out more about where their balance is, they certainly are people that I can help. But from the meditation perspective, I know that it's people that have got active, busy minds that are looking for an opportunity to just slow everything down a bit and get some more restful periods and restful sleep.
And then I suppose the breath work, you said that that's obviously can energize you and give you clarity. So by combining those two things, how is that really helping people?
When I do the breath power is a forms part of some of the events that I attend, but I also do breathwork days in their own right, and I combine a breath power session in the morning with a soul breathwork in the afternoon. And breath power, particularly for people that haven't done any breathwork before, is a great introduction, I find, because the instruction is basically breathe, and there's a rhythm and a beat, and it's breathe at this rate, and then breathe at a different rate. And this is basically it. So there's nothing technical about. You don't need to be in any particular sort of posture, or we don't talk about diaphragmatic and chest and different areas to breathe into, or anything, should we say, I don't know, technical, or if there's advanced yoga breath work, pranayamas and things. We're not doing any of that. We're breathing. And then it's breathe a bit quicker, then breathe even quicker. And you think you're breathing quickly, now you're going to breathe quickly. That's sort of it in a nutshell. But from that place, if you get anywhere near the experience that I got in terms of the dialing up or notching the dial up a bit and getting just a more intense experience of things, sensory experience, take that into another breathwork in the afternoon where the focus is different and is maybe subtler. It's not as intense, but because you've just done something very intense, the subtlety is easier to slip into. It's easier to breathe in that way, which is different, but you're more with it. Different but more with it. I don't know if that makes sense, but so the results from the soul breath work I find are more and intense isn't the word either. I'm struggling for the descriptions, but it can be more what somebody needs, and again, it's quite often you can come in thinking one thing and it's not that, I've been to events where people have turned up with their partners because their partner needed help. And then the person that brought the partner along because they needed the help was the one that got the most from the event, because they weren't expecting that there were areas that they could probably they benefit from. And so they've been helped even more. And I think with the breathworks, it's similar. You can come in thinking, yeah, I want to get this from it, or I want to try it, or I've heard it's good, or I've heard this about it, or I've seen Wim Hof on the telly and he's a bit mad and that'd be interesting. And then, an hour and a half later, you're lying there going, wow, I've just had an experience. And again, it varies from people to people. Everyone's going to be different. But I've had people reporting all sorts of different physical and emotional responses to what's gone on, and people that they've sort of connected with that they haven't connected with in during the breathwork session that have sort of come to them, or they've thought about, and then been surprised by the reaction that they had. So yeah, and I've even had someone that she'd broken her wrists, or broken one wrist and sprained the other one by, she'd fallen on the ice, and as she fell and put her hands out, she damaged both wrists. Filled some feedback in at the end of the day using the hand that she hadn't been able to write with for however many months, because she had feeling back in her extremities and her fingers that she hadn't had since she'd fallen. So, and she said, that had happened that afternoon. So it's difficult to say that it wasn't as a result of what she was doing, wasn't what I was doing. This is the other thing. It's not me doing it. She did it. I gave her the opportunity, if you like. I set the environment, got things in a position whereby she then, or her body, took that energy. That for me was a great example of, she's taken in all this energy. She was lying on the floor on the yoga mat, breathing as if she was running up a hill or whatever she was doing, and her body's gone, right, we can actually do some mending here, we can do some repair work. And that's sort of what it did. So that was, yeah.
Well, this is what, I mean, it's beautiful that now science is catching up, because, the naysayers, when we talk about the woo-woo, like you say, people are, they're getting results. It is what it is, and I think people like Joe Dispenza, and they're bringing, they're running tests. They're, you can see the brain, you can see different areas lighting up after different things, and I really feel that this is a time for growth in this area, because the fact that as human beings, we sort of, again, we've been conditioned to we need to see it to believe it. Right, rather than the whole idea of faith in and of itself is just, belief in the unseen. But I think that's amazing that we are in a position where we can, using these different bits of technology, even just a Fitbit, to prove to ourselves that we did get a better quality of sleep, and that healing, the body can heal itself. And you're right, it is the person doing it. It's not you're facilitating it, aren't you? You're encouraging them to get in themselves in the right space, in the right feeling place, in the right place of being, so that the body can go on to heal itself. I mean, I think what's going to be coming forward from this is great, because of this fact that, Newtonian physics has been dismissed almost, really. It's like quantum physics is now, we know that actually, we don't know anything. We thought we knew, and now we realise that we actually don't know anything, and there's this whole other level of quantum physics of what actually is going on.
Yeah.
Well, but it's great.
Yeah, but again, if you think, I don't know, acupuncture's been around for however many thousands of years. Well, you could look at it, and I'm sure there would have been BBC documentaries 50 years ago and look at these Chinese people sticking needles in their arms and think they get better, whereas we know you take a medicine and no, it can't be rubbish and have survived for as long as it has. And then you move into Asia, into India, and work on the chakras. And you could go, well, that's a load of nonsense because it's made up. But then you've got so acupunctures of pressure points, meridians. You've got chakras. All different versions of similar things. Qi and Chi and all the different names for the same stuff, basically. And then Wim Hof comes along, gets on the telly, does breathing, sits in ice baths, and then the media are all over it. But he's only really tapping into things that have already been known about by people for thousands of years. And he's presenting it in a different way. And he may not have come across it in that way, but he's rediscovered, or he's found a way of communicating something that's still been there. It's not changed. You know, I'm reading stuff now and finding stuff, you know, the Upanishads and the Vedas from, you know, India from 3,000-4,000 years ago, thinking, oh, blimey, this is what I read in Eckhart Tolle or Muji. It's not new. It's not new. It's just reinterpretations, the same knowledge, the same information, the same truth. But it needs to be reinterpreted as well for people to understand it now. You read an excerpt from the Bible from 2,000 years ago, and a lot it doesn't necessarily resonate. Reword it and rephrase it, give the same message, but do it on a YouTube short, and suddenly people are going, "Wow, this is awesome!" And you've just repackaged that same basic truth.
Because the truth is the truth. It is what it is. You know, I love people see that as a negative saying. I use it so often because you have to accept the isness of what is before you can move. So it is what it is. Like, you can't change what's happened. And, we are energy, whether you believe it or not. Just because you can't see it with your physical eyes, maybe with Chilean photography you can, but we are energy. This is how things work. It doesn't take your belief in it or not for it to continue working. So you may as well, maybe if your way isn't working, maybe try something different so that you experience some of the things you've been talking about that you've experienced coming out of breathwork. Like, isn't it worth it? Wouldn't it be worth just giving it a go to try to prove yourself wrong, man?
Go at it from that perspective. Yeah, this can't possibly be of any benefit or work. Okay, find out. And if afterwards you think, well, that was great, I feel better.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's the only way you're going to really know is through the experience. But the last thing that you also talk about is the fire walking. Why would anybody want to do it? Why? What benefit would they come from it? You know, explain a little bit more about that.
Okay, so I think it's pretty fair to say there's no physical benefit. Well, actually, no, that's not necessarily the case. I've seen people physically change in their demeanour after completing the fire. I actually saw someone change whilst they were firewalking. I was coincidentally at the side of the fire, and someone walked across, and you almost see her grow. She expanded, she straightened, she just, because of the realization as she crossed the coal bed of what she was doing and how she was feeling, because it wasn't burning her feet, she wasn't in pain. And the further across the coal bed she walked, I think that the realization was just flowing through her. It was like, wow, what have I just achieved? Because invariably when you stand and we always say, you never decide, the place to decide whether to firewalk or not is when you're stood at the front of the coal bed. Not in the room beforehand, not on the build up to the event, not during any of the event. It's when you get to the front of the coal bed. And at that point, you need to check in. You speedy up, chatty mind. You need to get that quieter, and you check in and you wait. And when you're ready, if you're ready, you firewalk and you step forward. And that first step into the unknown, because you don't know what you're going to feel, how that's going to feel until you've done it. But that first step, that then leads to the second step, and then the third step, and you're getting the feedback from the firebed. So the completion of a firewalk is a combination. You'll get, what you're getting from it is that ability to realize that you can face an unknown, and it's not feel the fear and do it anyway, or it can be, but that to me is not the most effective way or the most beneficial way to approach it, because you're denying it. Feel the fear and do it anyway is like, I'm just going to almost ignore it rather than accept the fear. accept the fear, allow the fear to pass through you, then do it. Because if you can fire walk from a place of peace and you're into different sort of energetic, emotional states and vibrational levels, because you're back to vibration. If you take it back to what you were saying about we're all energy, that firebed's got an energy, it's got a heat to it, and it's hot. We measure it often after the event, not before, because it freaks people out if they realise how hot it is. But if you can raise your energy, so your internal energy, your internal vibration is greater than that energy of the fire, the energy flow is from positive to negative, from higher to lower. You walk across a firebed at 700-800 degrees centigrade with feet that are fine at the end of it, because you've raised your energy internally. Your vibration is greater than that of a fire. That's the area that I like. There are different ways of approaching firewalks. You can get yourself into a heightened state of just, you could say, if anyone's ever done a Tony Robbins firewalk, I haven't, but I'm aware of the way they've got a lot of people to go across, so they get them all ready and right. Oh, come on, yeah, heightened state, but that's a different to a peaceful state. The energy of peace and love is just off the scale, and if your body's vibrating at that level, that energy, you can walk across something that's hundreds of degrees. You can cook a steak on it, but you could walk across it without any damage to your feet. And when you realize you've got that potential, that power, that energy within you, my Christ, there's not much you can't do if you focus that energy, that potential. That's right. Human so it's potential. All about that's your true potential. So the firewalk is a great way of showing people what their true potential is. And it's not about, yes, look what I've just done, and now it's not. It can be far more. It's far deeper than that, really, for me at least. Yeah,
love it. Well, it is. It is our beliefs that keep us stuck, I suppose. In and of itself, because the real belief, the real core, when we talk about when we've got to understand something so that we really know it, that's the belief. It is our own stories and beliefs that do keep us stuck in our self-built prison. So I suppose, like, again, I've never done one, but I again, consciously, I can understand the concept that, yes, then that inner belief is going to raise that, yes, I can actually do so much more. Look at what I've done. And it's funny that you mention feel the fear and do it anyway. I hadn't thought of it like that, but it just goes to show how, our words are on how we explain things are so important, because, yeah, you're right. No, the whole point is not to have the fear.
Why walk across a coal bed feeling frightened when you could walk across feeling happy? So I don't quite get that.
That's actually an ego. That's actually the ego saying, yes, I'm bigger than the fear, rather than, yes, acknowledge
accept that you're feeling
acknowledge
the fear.
It, accept it, and feel peace even the same.
Yeah, that very act of acknowledging and accepting the fear actually is a raising your energy higher than doing it from that place. And we do a lot of work around that on the emotional mastery retreat and on the emotional intelligence work that I do with Sanjay. That's a core part of it. Those are energetic levels that we're in, and realizing that you can have a bearing on. So that's how you control how you feel. You do. Ultimately, you're responsible for the way you feel, and you can have a direct impact on that and a direct influence on that. And it's not then being reactive to external situations and circumstances and blaming the outside world for how you are. You then actually know, I'm going to be responsible for how I feel and how I am. And it's nothing to do with the rest of the world.
Self-mastery. Master thyself. So for those, if they're watching this on video or social media, they'll have all your details below. But just to the listeners, I hope they're interested in this, because this all fascinates me. I love it. I'm just a long-term student. But how do they get in touch with you? How do they get involved?
I would say initially, certainly check out the website onebreath.uk, because there are links on there to the breathwork days. Come along to a breathwork day, absolutely. There are recordings of the meditations and some online breathworks that I did as well. So they're all on the website. They're available. But yeah, I'd say click on the link for a breathwork day and come and experience it, because that's when you truly find out what it is for you and how it works for you. That's not the words I'm looking for, but experience it. That's really the key, and experience this, and then experience some other things, and then do some other things, and just keep experiencing things, because that's why we're here.
That's what life's about. We've got to find, there's so much around. It's a massive kitchen, isn't it? And you've got to choose your ingredients to make your cake. Yeah. Yeah. I like chocolate. Look, this is not the first time we've spoken. This has been a great conversation, Dave. I've thoroughly enjoyed.
Last as well.
Love it. We so get in touch, and it's all down to that's what life is about, experiencing. So many people are focused on collecting things. I've never really understood that. Life's about the experience. So get in touch. So collecting. I'm going to be a collector of experiences.
That's it, yeah.
So thank you for your time. To the rest of the listeners, I will be back on Thursday with a Coffee with Karen. Bye for now.
Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.